What's the most out-of-touch thing a rich person has said to you? Long ago when I was a server in a country club, I was very new to properly opening wine bottles, as I was using my key to take off the foil and gash the webbing on my hand bad. Husband and wife at the table. I put down the bottle, and was about to leave when he says, "Who told you to stop pouring?" I picked it up, poured the wine, dribbling blood all over the white tablecloth. Went outside, had a smoke and thought about my life. Isn't it funny we are the same age, but my dad bought me a condo and you have to work 2 jobs. Built a 3 mil house for a couple. After the neighbors built their home, we're talking, and the wife says that little house is so dinky. We have a joke going that we call it the helps house. Now this is still a $750K 1 mil home, no less. Just struck me as not very grounded, rolling on the floor laughing. I was between jobs and a bunch of my friends told me that I should take the time to go travel the world. Like just because someone doesn't have a job doesn't mean they can just travel the world. In fact, the opposite is more likely. But also you motherfuckers thought the reason I wasn't traveling the world because I hadn't thought of it. I have no hair on my body. You should have your husband take you to get laser hair removal. It only cost me $10,000. Maybe in my dreams. She was the mayor's daughter and I was catering her dog's birthday party. They lived in Boston and we were talking about how small condos are there. They were lamenting that they had no space and, as a result, they had to buy another condo. This was Beacon Hill because they ran out of space to store their Persian rugs. In college, I made most of my money cleaning and tutoring for rich families. Here are the highlights. It's so much more convenient to have a sauna in your house. We ordered our wallpaper from Europe. It's the only way to go. I just bought the empty lot next to ours so we won't have neighbors. And my personal favorite. Rich person's kid. Gosh, I can't find any babysitting jobs. They've been taken by the one. Rich parent. Honey, you are the one. Oh yeah, you can keep all of this since I'm moving out. I'll buy new stuff for my next place. Some dude I knew who was taking classes at a prestigious university in a very nice studio apartment, whose father had just flown in from Indonesia just to help him pack his clothes. I got a full mattress set that was about $3K, multiple leathers for carpeting, expensive looking paintings, way too much IKEA stuff, and a Dyson vacuum. I was working at a car dealership and saw the owner pull up in a $250,000 Porsche GT3. Told him how much I loved the car and dreamt of owning one someday. Owner looked at me confused and said, "What do you mean? We sell them right here, you know." Totally blew my mind that he didn't realize his employees couldn't afford the cars they were selling. I was talking to my manager about a mistake on a check. This isn't even enough to cover my daughter's daycare for the month. Well, what did you do with the money you were just paid? Food, rent, electricity, and car payment. Boom, check gone. One thing I've learned about very wealthy people is they tend to hang around with other very wealthy people. If I want to take a vacation to Aspen and go skiing, I'm going to pay out my asshole for that. Between flight, equipment rental, and hotel, a wealthy person will just talk to their friends who will offer up their multi-million-dollar chalet that they have just for funsies. Wealthy people will literally have a ski chalet that they rarely go to that houses all of their top-of-the-line ski equipment and just offer it to their friends. My boss's wife grew up wealthy and then married an heir to the throne for a multi-million-dollar organization. She is meandering around our office bullpen one day and brings me into the conversation. "How about you? Where would you take your lady on a honeymoon?" I dunno, go to the coast for a week and just enjoy the sun. She laughed out loud at me and said, "Oh my God, no woman will ever marry you unless you're going to take her on a Hawaiian honeymoon." At the time I made $10 an hour. My boss is an attorney. A client who was filling out her financial statement for a divorce realized that she had forgotten to include her student loans on the report. Laughing somewhat ruefully, she said, "I can't believe I forgot to include that." And in a bright, sunny voice my boss laughed and said I sometimes forget that I own a boat. The client and I quietly locked eyes with a shared understanding of how out of touch that was. Me, yeah, I love flying. I have a nice flight sim setup at home. Wish I could do it for real. Owner of the company, yeah, the real thing is so much better. You should buy a plane. I love taking mine out for trips. Me, you sign my checks. L worked for Medicaid. The big bugs at the state government level had a poverty exercise where they had to try to budget at poverty level and live on it for 3 days. My, that was so difficult. No shit, pal, that whole idea pissed me off so bad. I dated a rich guy who loved my authenticity, and he would pick me up in one of his dad's cool collector cars and take me to record stores. When I went to visit him, I showed up in my grandpa's old Ford F-150 truck. He asked me why I drove around in that thing. I shrugged and said because I'm poor. And he said, no, you're not. It was like I ruined his whole hipster aesthetic and he realized I wasn't grunge. I was venting to a schoolmate about not being able to have a car. She said, why don't you just ask your mom? It literally broke my brain. Like, yeah, why didn't I think of that? You're just letting money stop you. Yes, it does that. Boss, my wife and I decided that you and your wife should join us in the Caribbean. I'll pay for everything. Me, we appreciate the offer but we won't be able to afford it. Boss, why? Me, I'd have to hire someone to watch the kids. Boss, what? Surely your nanny can handle that. Money has been tight, so we have to wait a couple more weeks before we break ground on the new air-conditioned stable for the horses. It's only $1,000. Okay, bitch. Then give it to me. Met a guy on a backpacking trip that said he couldn't understand why all these backpackers stayed in hostels when there are so many hotels around. I pointed out that most of us have budgets and hostels are cheaper. The thought had just never occurred to him that we can't all afford that. Same thing with restaurants. He just never considered that nicer places aren't in everyone's budget. Referring to a coworker, they said she's been saying she wants to buy a house. She's in her 30s now but she still rents. Kinda embarrassing. This person owns an apartment downtown, is paying for a fucking villa in the suburbs with the help of some relative and could choose to stay at their parents' big-ass house which they've owned for generations. According to this person, they're normal people because they're middle class, they're not filthy rich old money. The coworker is middle class too. And if she can't afford a house right now, how the FK are we supposed to? My CEO's daughter was talking to me and she now lives in the UK. She bought a place in London. I mentioned I have some family over there that I've always been interested in visiting, and hope to see it one day. Her response? Just go. Definitely, it's as easy as buying a plane ticket. She had no idea why I hadn't gone yet. You've never been to Disney? Did your parents not love you or something? Bitch, my parents were raising 3 kids working 2 jobs on poverty wages. I was going through a bad time financially and my mental state was very low. A woman said to me, when I feel depressed I go to India for a month and just chill. That always cheers me up in a manner that I took as I ought to do it if I had any sense. I worked for a very wealthy lady. Her son graduated college with some useless degree and she put him to work answering phones. She also bought him a car. Can you believe it? I told her I wanted a blue car. She didn't get him a blue car, so he asked her to paint it. She refused. I could see his naivete as he spoke, since he truly thought this was something I could relate to. Sorry kiddo, I had to work at Chuck E. Cheese as a teenager to be able to afford to buy a piece of crap that overheated if I drove for longer than 20 minutes. I was venting to a coworker about how burnt out I was. She has a very rich husband, and used to be high income herself, but stepped down to relax a bit and she suggested I take a few weeks off and travel. I make $30,000 a year and pay rent. She would also complain to me about finding a townhome to buy for her 18-year-old son so he didn't have to live in a dorm his freshman year of college. The horror was that she didn't like the carpet in the one they bought, so she wanted to replace it. "How often do you go sailing?" said by the guy that knows I was struggling financially. One Big Four partner to another when talking about some unexpected personal expenses in a room full of junior staff. "It's only $50K, but still." The whole room went silent. "It's not expensive, you just can't afford it." My friend's family sold their company for $3-4 billion. Yes, billion with a B. He was obviously awarded a chunk of that money and of course was audited by the IRS because he moved to a state that has no income tax prior to the sale. He asked me if everyone gets audited by the IRS when they submit their taxes. "Not when you're in my tax bracket,"